It's that in-between time of year. It's not really spring, but it's not really winter anymore. These hellebores are starting to bloom, and the birds are starting to come back, and they have to take some shelter because it's still snowing. This is the hellebore little chicks that I have for you to paint today, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So get your stuff ready. All the items are listed in the description, and we'll see you in a bit. Alright, so you have your substrate ready, and we're going to put on the background first. And then we'll put the traceable on top of the background. That way you don't have to worry about fiddling around leaves and flowers and all that. So I want probably the just below half, I want it to be fairly dark halfway down, then light, and then gradually lightening up in this area in the center, and the darker on the edges, but not quite as dark as the very bottom. So I have dioxazine purple, cerulean blue, and white here, and I'm gonna just wet my brush, and this has been gessoed already, so I'm just going to take some cerulean blue and probably just put in that line where I want it to stop. And I want to add some dioxazine purple with that. A little bit of. And I'm gonna mix it on my canvas. I'm not going to worry about mixing a color up. So just mix it. Don't worry too much about paint marks, like your brush marks, because there's going to be quite a few things going over top of this, so you really wouldn't see them anyways. But if it's a little bit harder to spread, if it's kind of dragging, they call it, then just add a little bit of water to your brush. And as I go into the center here, I want it lighter. That's pretty good. So the bottom part is actually a lot of snow. Yeah, we're doing snow again. But they're spring flowers. But I do want a little bit of this down in here. So I'm just gonna put this dark in here. Just a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to wipe off my brush and add that white. It's a little bit on the blue side, so you can add a little blue on there. We will be adding white on top of this too, so don't worry if it's not a white. Okay, it's good and dry now. So now I want to put my traceable on. So you can use whatever tracing paper you have. I may use white. Well, I'm going to test it out first. If not, I'll be using a dark gray. Okay, so get your traceable. Decide where you want it placed on your page. think I'm going to put mine right about there. And make sure you tape it down so you can lift the paper up to see if all the tracing was done or not. Because it's kind of tricky to replace it. And some people actually put it on their table or beside them like this and leave it there afterwards, like fold it over the other side just in case they have to retrace something. That way you don't have to worry about repositioning it. So I think I'll do that just in case. You never know. It's a handy little thing to remember. All right, so you don't need to watch me do this, but you can do yours, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I have it all nicely traced out, and I had to use the darker one because there wasn't enough left on the white one. Looks like I've got a bit of a shine, so I'm going to turn off the overhead light. This should do. I think it's light enough for you. So what we're going to do, we're going to start from the background first. So we do have some, I could have put it in before I added this, but I think I'll just put in some slightly darker blue. So I'm going to see if I have any Payne's Gray would be perfect. Or I can mix a little black with ultramarine, or let's see, do I have any ultramarine? Yes, I do. I do have some ultramarine, but I'm going to make a little bit of a blacker or darker. So black, okay. There's some black here. I'm just going to put it over this side here. We don't need a lot of it. Okay, so a touch of black in that mix. And that'll give it a Payne's Gray look. All right, so now we're going to start off by doing the back leaves. So these are not really in the line, in the olivey shade. They're more of a, I guess you could say, a hooker's green color. I do have, let's see, what's light green permanent, and I'm gonna put a squidge of that out, and I'm gonna put a little bit of this magenta on my palette. Just, well, it's not magenta, it's what is it called? Violet. It's more of a maroon color to me, but if you mix red with a green, it will desaturate that color, so it's not as bright. So anything that is in the opposite of the color wheel from the color you're using, it will do the same. Doesn't matter what color it is. Okay, so I got out a little bit of turquoise phthalo, and I'm going to use a little bit of that to mix in with my green also to give it a little bit of a cooler green color. Okay, so we have our palette here, and we're going to start on the top part here. So this is that grayed down green, and we're just going to, actually let's mix a little bit more of that because we will use quite a bit. Okay. And then I will mix a little bit of the brighter green too, and some of the, so we're going to use that, the brighter green, but just with a bit of yellow added to it, I think. So that's pretty bright. Maybe a touch of red, or that other color. Violet, I guess they called it. Okay, so not quite as much, but and then a little bit of, let's get some more of that green. Some more green. And a little bit of this blue. I'm going to put that over there. And I'm going to put this right over here, and I'm going to just put some of this blue in it to blue it in that green. That's good. Maybe a tad of, there we go. A little bit more blue. That looks pretty good. More desaturating. Okay, that looks pretty good. And we could also use just a tad of black in there to darken it. There we go. Okay, so we're going to kind of go in between the leaves. We're not going to base coat them. We're going to use all these colors on the leaf at the same time. We can put a little bit of white in there too. So let's start off with this olivey color. And don't worry about doing the exact as what I'm doing. All leaves are different. As long as you can put some those colors in your palette and just go with it. It'll be fairly dark in here, right in between the flowers. So I'm just going to put maybe even a little bit more blue in one area, or a little bit black. A little darker there, because I know it's very dark in here. Now, I'm not too worried if I go into the flower, because we'll paint these with a white base coat, because they're a white flower. We don't want that blue shining through. Okay. So I want maybe a little bit of this green coming in it too. Just mix it in. Bit on that top. And they're kind of pointy. And they do have a bit of a midrib, so you don't have to put it in right away. We can do that later. But let's get the first coat on, I guess you could say. Okay, so wherever you're seeing these leaves, you can do the same thing. They're basically all the same. So this is another one here, so we could go in. I'm going to do a bit of the stem too, because we will put more colors on this, so don't get hung up on, you know, you just put a certain color in a certain area and you're not sure if it should go there. Just play with it. You can decide which direction is your light source. This one here doesn't, well, kind of up above, I would say. This is kind of a ground view. So you're seeing down low. So it's in a forest too, so there would be lots of different shadows from trees, and maybe because it's snowing it would be overcast, so there wouldn't be a whole lot of I can't talk and paint. There wouldn't be a whole lot of a shadow or a light source. Let me bring you guys in a little bit, and I'll move this around as I go, just so that you can kind of see what I'm doing here. It looks dark, but it well, it is fairly dark, but we'll be putting other colors on this too. Like that. I think this is going to be, I'm going to put a little bit of white in there. Let's see, I'm going to put this stem here. A little bit of white in there. And let's see, where else? This is a lot more on the bluish side of things. So I just add a little bit more blue to this green here. Maybe a little bit of white in there. Like I said, add different colors to it as you go, so you can mix on your page. Now this is a sword, a 1/4 inch. If you find you work better with a round, then use what's comfortable for you, especially in these smaller areas. Oh, did I just paint over something? Let me see. I think I did. No, I didn't. I have my pattern in front of me, so I can refer to it if I get confused on something. So I'm just putting in a midrib here. You can change up the colors a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to put in a little bit of this stem here. Let's see, it goes down here like that. And this is the back part of the flower. It's got kind of leafy stuff on it, and it's a little bit brighter green. I'm going to put a little bit of white with that, because when you start getting into the lighter colors, a lot of times it's a little bit on the transparent side. So by adding either buff or white helps it stop the background from shining through. Just take your time, enjoy the process of painting. A little bit in here, that, and there's in this thing here. Don't worry about stuff too, like it's so easy to fix. Okay, and this is dark underneath because it's shadowed. I'm just using the little tip of my angle brush. And I could go into a little bit of white even with a bit of yellow right on the top here. We can do all that little stuff once this dries too. So you don't have to finish a leaf and then go on to the next leaf. As long as you have a base coat, you're good. Alright, so let's put some of this on this leaf. And this one is kind of a darker leaf. But like I said, you can make them whatever you want. You don't have to stick to the color I'm doing. Put a little bit of another color with it. And we will go back over top of this too. So I'm using the point of my sword brush to get those points along in the leaf, which is nice. that's it for the flowers. Although right in the little spaces in here, I want to do those really dark. So I'm going to take that dark with a bit of black and make those areas really dark. So actually, yeah, just thinking I'm gonna darken this here, just on the tips here and there. And I just, you brush it towards the direction of the veins, the way the veins would be running. Let's try to remember that. Other than that, you just kind of have to play with it till you get a way of doing it that you like. Just playing. Even a little bit lighter, the green here. A little bit of yellow and a little bit of that green. And we'll just put a little bit of a shine in here. Here and there. Maybe a little bit in here. And then I'm going to lighten that even lighter. So just adding white to that mix. And I'm going to put a center line in. So a vein. And they have some smaller ones. Okay, there's a little bit of blue. I'm going to put some blue in that just to lighten it up a bit. And I missed a, well, that we'll have to do, I guess. No, I don't like that. Let's put some white with this. I want a lighter color for the stems. Clean my brush off. All right. Yeah, some of this olive color. Let's just mix some white with it. Maybe a touch of yellow in there. Okay. And just down the stems. In this area here. Very loose rendition. We will put the flowers in first before we really get too involved in that flower part. Sometimes the little leaves have edges that are kind of starting to turn. Let's see, this one here. Same colors that I'm using. I want that mid-rib pretty well all the same on all of them. Okay. And those ones up there could do the same. back and we're doing the little birds now. I did put a white coat, base coat of white on my flowers down below and a little bit of white with a bit of purple in the snow area on the bottom. I just forgot to press record. So we're just doing these cute little sparrows and they're going to be painted with burnt umber, just a base coat, nothing no blending, just a base coat, and just leave the beak so you can see where it is. We can figure out where the eyes are because we have our reference photo of our traceable, so we can use that for putting those back in. Now I can see the lines a little bit through this, but if you find that you've totally lost any of your form of the birds, you could always put your traceable back on and retrace it. So there's 4 little sparrows here, and we're just gonna do these very simple, not too much detail in these ones. They're kind of shadowed in underneath this leaf, and they're kind of dark. They're not really meant to be the main subject matter. It's all about the flowers in this painting, but they're kind of a little bit of a surprise for the viewer when they spot them. So just carefully positioning my paintbrush around those little tips, but if you find that you've covered some of it, you can always go back in with your green and put them back in. As you can see, I've gone over top of that little bit of white grass there. We'll be putting a whole lot more of that in once the birds are done, but you do want to get those birds done first. So I hope you've been enjoying this painting. I know it's a little bit of a longer one, but I thought it would be a good one for you to do for this in-between seasons that we're in. Not quite spring, but we're just at the end of winter. Okay, so I noticed that way back in underneath this leaf there are some stems from this plant or other things that are under there, but it was a little bit too light, so I want it really, really dark. So you could either use a deep Payne's gray, a black, or you can mix something that's very dark, but you want it darker than the birds. And we are going to darken these stems a little too, because they're a little bit on the light side for being in a shadowed area. And again, if you feel more comfortable with a round brush, then please use what you're comfortable with. I do like flats, but not everyone does, and a round will do the same job. There, I've just got a little bit of a darker mix there of the green, and it's a very watered down mix, so it's more of a glaze that I'm putting over top of these stems. But it does help with the shadowed areas being more realistic. We will be putting a little bit more on those birds. I'm just waiting for it to dry, and then we'll add a little bit of highlight and shadow. And they do have a little bit of a grayish buff color on their chest a little bit. So I thought, well, while I have this dark color, I may as well put some shadows along the veins of the leaves here. Give a little bit more dimension. And I'm using that dark blue color that I made with a bit of water in it. So it's very, very watered down. Now I thought I would put a little bit of a highlight on these veins, not on the whole thing, but just where I feel it would be the higher areas of the veins, because they are kind of curved slightly. So just in those curved sections, just a little bit lighter of that green that I used. So I just add a little bit of white to that green mix. And the center is a little bit lighter. And then, of course, put some more lighter tips on some of these leaves, just to give them a little bit more interest, especially around these birds, and that helps bring out the bird a little bit more. As you can see, it makes a big difference when you have more than just three hues of that color. So we have your medium, your highlight, and your dark color. So to add a couple more, so even lighter and maybe a really deep dark will give you a whole lot of contrast and dimension to your painting. Okay, the birds are dry, so we'll start putting a little bit more dimension to them by adding some shadows. And because they're underneath this, they're shadowed a little bit more at the back. So I'm just putting a little bit on their back, up around their head where the shadow would be, giving the head a bit more form instead of it looking so flat. And underneath its beak and between wherever they're touching. And this is a very watered down consistency also. I don't want it too thick. There was a little bit of a shadowed area also around the beak. There's the shadow from the leaf. And I'm just basically dry brushing it into the body of that bird. So you don't want a hard line, you want it a little bit blended into the bird. not a lot of detail on these, but they do look cute in this painting, I think. If you don't want them in your painting, you can just leave them out and just make the leaves or the background part of that area. Alright, now we're going to finish up the bird. So we're going to add a little bit of this titanium buff. And I'm using a rake or a grainer brush, they call it. So it has the narrowing of the edge, gets thinner. And these are great for feathers and that type of thing. So it's kind of the breast of this one is just a little bit on the lighter side, but I still want some of this to show through. So just a little bit of marks here and there, and just a bit on the side here, and then it gets a little bit lighter. Well, I think it'll be easier if we just color this in, and then we'll add some more dark on top. Now they do have a little bit of lighter color around the eye, but this brush is too big, so I'm going to have to use my small brush here. So I'm just going to use this small detail brush and just underneath, so it kind of attaches to the beak area, and just under the eye, just a little bit of light area. Like that. So put in just a little area. You want a little bit of the brown though around the bottom part. Okay. Now you can take some of that brown, the umber color, and we're going to put a little bit of this under his beak. I think I can change this a little bit too. And I'm going to add a little bit of black to this. So I want it fairly dark right underneath the beak. Kind of have a little black patch. And then where the eye is, it's got a little bit of black area that goes up over that beak. It's just above the beak. Okay. Now we can go back to that brown, the umber color, and he has kind of like striping. So I'm just going to put a little bit in here, just under there, and take it into the titanium buff color. And then just a few strokes. It goes around the chest area. Like that. Okay. Then we can take a little bit and just detail some of the back area. So you can make a little bit more feathery look to it if you want. Sweep it in. This is just what, a number 0 brush that I have here, and I'm just lightly, not hard, just very lightly flicking it in towards the bird, the center part of the head. So this here, a little bit darker, right in here. Just up there a little bit. And they do have a little bit of an eyelid. So I'm going to just take a little bit, see if I can draw a little bit of an eyelid. And I'm leaving a little bit of that lighter brown just around the top part. And I'm going to put a line where his beak opens. It's a little darker, closer to the bird. I think I need a little bit of a different shape though on the bottom. So we'll change that up a little bit by taking our buff titanium and it just has to come down a little bit like that. And then this like that. A little bit of gray. Where'd that gray go? To make some, I guess. So a little bit of this. And a little bit of gray just in the oh, that's more green in there. Just in the center here. Just below that. And I'm gonna darken the top of it with this green of that stem. Now you don't have to get as fussy as I am. You know me, I like detail. I'm going to take a little bit of this brown and too much water on my brush. A little of that brown. And I'm just going to flick that out a little bit over that stem. Just so that I can get a better shape to that beak there. Yeah, he looks good. Now we can also take some of this brown, add some yellow to it. Oh, that's actually too green. Let's try the umber with a little bit of yellow in it and a little bit of umber. I want a lighter color, brown. Almost should have a little bit of red in there. Let's see. I've got some just red craft paint. I just need a dab. Not much. Let's put some red in there. That's better. A bit of yellow. Yeah. Okay, and then just on the top of his head, it's kind of a umber color. Actually, I think I'll put a little more titanium in there. Just lighten a little bit more in the center. Like that. Just gives them a little bit more detail. And then just along here where his the bottom part of his body is, you could add a little bit of this to that. Just flick it upwards here and there. Don't cover everything though. We just want a little bit because it gets fairly dark in there. We can go back with, say, some the dark again. Just go back over. That. Okay, and then the breast part, just the plain buff titanium on your brush, and just brighten up some of the areas again. And just brightening it up here and there. Okay, and then you can go back into the brown if you have to. While it's wet, you can go back into that. Maybe a little bit more under his eye. Could be just a little brighter. It's a little better. All right, there's the first one. So now let's do this other guy right here. Not much to do on him actually. Just a little bit of a highlight on his beak there. And he does have a little bit of a highlight right there, where the bottom of his beak, like that. And then he has some of that reddish color on the top of his head, but just in the center, not much, just right there. And then a little bit of the buff with it. Remember, we put the buff in it. Like that. And then you can take some brown. We're only seeing, you hardly see his other eye at all. So actually this could come down into that eye a little bit. And then we're going to take some of that buff. And again, just in the center here, just a little bit, not too far over to the leaf though, because that's fairly shaded in that area, so we don't really need a whole lot there. can put a little bit of a darker color under his beak there. Take that into the okay, that looks good. Now these guys here, we want the buff. And they're a little more brighter in. Oop. Keep doing that. So a little bit more under that eye there. Actually, that doesn't need to be. Well, we'll go back over it. A little bit under the chin. And just a bit on the body. So there's a little area just right in here. And we'll cover a little bit of this back up with brown. Okay. And then again, that reddish brown color. So this time it's just, I think I'd learn. Just right up here. Above his eye, more or less. It's a little brighter. I think I'll put a little bit of titanium in that. Like that. And then we can put some of this also just in the bottom part of this area. And along the just the edge of where we put that white. Just brighten that up a little bit. And a little bit black. Just under his chin here. By his eye, just a smidge. And he does have a little bit of a opening for his beak. It's not too noticeable. It is kind of gray there though, so let's do a little bit of that gray again under his beak here. It's a little bit darker on just on the ones. That's still too bright. Right in here. Leave a little bit of white, but and let's take that brown and just right in here again, where just stroke it in so it looks feathery. Bit of water on my brush. You want it to be able to flow. I'm gonna fix the tops of his head here. And well, let's bring this in a little bit into this section here. Like that. And that looks pretty good. Okay. So they're no, they're hidden. So you're not going to see a lot of them, of it. The one down here is a little bit more in the open. So he's going to have a little bit of a lighter strokes on his head. And this time it's going to be a little bit of the titanium buff and then just a bit of the reddish brown. That bit down here. Then I'm going to put a little bit of that brown with that. Let's see. Change it a little bit. Some of that reddish brown there, and a little bit along the beak edge by his head. And a little bit darker as you go towards the back of the head. You can sweep it in. Maybe even a little bit of black in there. Make it dark. Right in here. Just a little bit along the beak towards the eye. I think I have that eye too far, but I'm going to go with it. All right. And then the body part in here, I'm going to put some grasses and stuff in there, so I'm not worried about it, because we're going to go back in there and put those in. Just fix up my eye a little bit. Good. Okay. All right. Yeah, I like it. Now we can put a little bit of a shine. Now these probably wouldn't have a shine, but I like putting a little bit of a shine. So just at the top. Like that. Very slight. Looks good. All right. I'm happy with it. Okay, that looks good. So now we have to put in some more leaves and grasses and frosted grass type of thing. And we have to have some white and some dioxazine purple. So we're going to use this and mix a little bit of white, a little bit of purple. So now I can go back over here and put in the grasses. There were a few in here. Let's see, a little bit more. So they're kind of sheltered. So I'm just throwing a bunch of these in. Let's put a little bit more white on my palette. I want it to be very light. I don't want it dark. I want a little bit of purple, but not a whole lot. So let's actually use this. So as you go down, we're going to put more in, and they're all going the same direction. And make some that are broken. Some are thinner, some are bigger. So the snowdrops, for them to show up, we're going to do them in kind of a little bit on the yellowy side, actually. So I want that white. Let's see. Let's get another tray. I want the white with a tad of yellow in it. Not much, but a bit. And in the centers, it'll be much more yellow, but I just want you to go over the shapes with this yellow color. See how they show up? It's a little bit of white and yellow. So while they're drying, we're going to take the green and put some of those stems back in. So let's see, I'll get my small brush for that. So my number 2 flat. And we want some of that Jenkins green, I think it was, or Hooker's green can do. And you can add a little bit of yellow to it. Could also add a little titanium buff. And then put your stems in. So let's see, I think there one's there. This one. Alright, so while those are drying, we'll start working on these up here. So I'm going to use a little bit of a bigger brush. So this is number 6 flat, and we're going to use white with a little bit of that yellow again. So let's take some white and yellow over here. And like underneath here, there'd be a little bit of a yellow. Kind of on the edge, flick it into the flower along here. Now I have a little outline here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and cover some of that. Now I can still see it, but it's not as strong, so I don't want that showing through. Now I did put in, because I forgot to press play, but all I have done is put a little bit of a gray edge to any of those flipped up areas, and then just streaked a little bit going in the direction of how the petal is positioned. So I want to take a little bit of this mauve color, and what I'm going to do is just do a little bit more streaking in the direction that the petals are going. So giving it a little more texture, I guess you could say. Some areas might be a little bit more than others because of shadow. So you'll have to decide on that by looking at the corner reference there. And you can do this to all of the flowers. I also go back and forth with a little bit of white. So if you find that you've put too much in, just take the white and go back over top of it and do a little bit of streaking. Okay, and then we'll dry that and we'll put the stamens in the center too. So let's dry that. Okay, so now what we want to do is there's just the slightest bit of a green glow in the center. So I want more or less a brighter green, so I'm going to use this green here. And I just want to mix it with some water because I want it more or less a glaze. And it's just radiating out like this. You can put a little bit in here too, so wherever the center, like that. Okay, and then for the stamens, you want a fairly small brush with a good tip. Don't get anything flared or you won't get a good tip. Let's see, I think this is a good one. Should work. And the stamens are going to be kind of a yellow gold. So we want to take this yellow here, some of this burnt umber, and make this yellow gold. Okay. And then right in the center of this one here, there is kind of, you see the center of it. Now you might have to put some white to make this show. And then the deep in the center is umber, that umber color. So it gets kind of a darker color there, like that. Okay. Put that gold in, like that. I'm going to put a little white with this because there's yellow in there. It tends to be transparent. So if you mix a little white or buff, either one, then it'll cover a little bit easier. So let's do this one while that dries. So it flares out. So these stamens, and there's different heights. Let's see if I can, I want a fairly small line. I don't want it too thick. You might want to use a Posca marker if you have one in this color. And you want them crisscrossing too. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this umber, make it a little darker. And right on the tips, put a little dot. Like this. And there's quite a few. Kind of jumble up and like that. Okay. And then do the same thing for the other one. The only difference is it's going around in the circle. So on one side they're a little shorter because it's of the this side, because of the perspective, you're a little bit shorter. So don't make them too big or long. And crisscross them because they will be different lengths. So you need a certain amount of water on your brush. These ones over here are going to be longer. Curve some of them. Okay, and then you do the same thing. You take some of that brown, mix it with some of that color you had, and then just put those dots on. Take a look at the reference. So you will see there's a certain way of putting those dots on. They're a little more close to the center on this side, but not on this side. That's due to the perspective. Okay, like that. And you can let those dry. While those are drying, I'm going to take a little bit of that green, so this green here, and a little bit of the, what was it, Jenkins green? Get a little darker with some yellow, some white, and right in here is this goes into the flower. So we want to sweep some of that into the flower. A bit more dark there. More a little yellow added to that, and some more white. on a nice bright color, but light. And there's some highlights on this one. Even lighter, I think. Real light. Okay, so let's test it. Yeah, that's a good color. So there's these little, I don't know what they're called, brackets of some sort that are on the back of these. Kind of a leaf, but a little bit different. They do have a little bit of highlights, contrast in color. Same within here. That. And down the stems a little bit, that bright color. And you can even put some of that in your leaves if you want to. Just smush them a little bit. It's kind of this color, but a little bit different. Looks good. Okay. So let's do a little bit to these snowdrops. Now the snowdrops are going to be done the same way, so that kind of purpley color. I'm going to add a little bit of blue. Where is that? This one. A bit more. And water on my brush so that it falls off easily. Okay, so we're going to think about the shadows. So they would have a few shadows here and there where they come to the meet. There'd be a little bit of shadowing even along the stem there. I'm going to put a little bit of blue. That blue. Yeah, nope, that's black. There, a little bit of blue in there. Oh, that's a bit too much. Put some more purple. A little bit more white. Kind of wanted a dirty purple, I guess you could say. Yeah, that's better. So there's these little areas that would have shadowing wherever they're overlapping. There'd be a slight shadow here and there. They have little ribs in veins, that type of thing. Not a lot, but they do have some. Let's see. This one has a little bit of a curl in the petal. So that's what you're seeing there. Doesn't have to be a lot. And then there's this just to show the difference. This one's got a little bit of shadow in the top part. They have that little green area on them too. The insides are a little bit darker. This one, I gotta put the little knobby things too on them. They have these little green bulbs, it almost looks like, on their just before the petals. Okay, I think that's gonna be okay. Maybe a few more in here. Then a nice green, so like more of a olivey color green. So let's make a little bit of a olive shade here. It's fairly dark too. Okay, so, and it's just halfway, kind of a little dabs you'll see them have. So it's kind of in the bell part of it, the center. And this one here, have a little bit in there. And then put some in here. And I think I'm gonna just put a little bit there. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow, soft yellow, and I'm just gonna put it in the center of a couple of these just to give it a little bit more dimension. Just needs a little bit something. Like that. I think that's good. Okay. Now I'm gonna let's fix this. Not too much water. Okay, and then the little bulbous thing that's just before petals is about right here. I'm going to have to add some white to that though, because it's a bit transparent over this blue. But we can put some highlights and shadows on it too. Same with here. We can make it a little bigger right there. And right in this one. And then you just take your darker color and go under, or depending on where it is on the sides of it, make it a little bit darker on the edges, and then that should be good. You can play with a bit of shading and highlights on your stems and leaves here too, if you want. Let's make this a little bit more transparent or opaque, I mean. Better. Yeah, just play with it to get it the way you want. It is fun. I think that looks pretty good. All right. And I want to put a little bit of a highlight on those dots. So your white with some yellow, find a spot. You want it fairly bright. And then just on the dab, maybe a little bit more yellow in that. Just dab on those dots. Just gives it a little bit more detail. And I'm gonna make this center in here a little bit lighter, just around the inside edge there, and then I'm gonna take some of this yellow and go back over it I need it a little bit lighter, and then some of that darker color around the edge. Kind of has a little bit of a shadowed area. If you like yours the way it is, that's good too. You don't have to get as fussy. Alright, now the next thing I want to do is put a little bit more definition in these white areas on the edges. So I'm going to take a Sharpie, or if you have a Posca, you could do that. Some kind of white marker, acrylic marker. I think this will work. And it just go around the edge. Brighten that white up. Actually, I think I need a bigger marker. Get my other Posca. All right. Shake it a little bit more. Just helps it a little bit. Get that brightness that you want. So it does have that edge of white. That. And you're able to fix any rough edges that you don't want, that type of thing. A bit of a glow on the back of this one. Which is nice. Okay, that looks good. You could even, if you wanted to, go over a few of these, add a little bit more, or take your yellow and do it. Just have fun with it. Even take your marker and mark some of them. Okay, that's good. I think I like it. A little bit of a highlight on some of these right here. Like that. You don't have to do that, but let's see if we can brighten some of these up too. Where they would have some bright highlight. This one might be a little bit more wavy. We could do that. That. Looks good. This one's kind of blended in a little bit, so let's fix that a little. Yeah, that looks pretty good. What else? Oh, we could probably put a little bit of a shine on some of these beaks here, just a bit. Maybe a little bit more of a shine on their eye. More noticeable. Okay, that looks pretty good. I don't know what he did there. Dropped some purple. Okay, so there's that. So now it's snowing, so we want to put some snow on here. So I'm going to take a probably a fan brush. Let's see what we got here, or even one of these brushes. Get it good and wet. Take my, I guess I'll have to get some more white out here. Take the white. Make sure you have a lot of water on your brush. You want it milk consistency. And then just tap. I like big ones and small ones, so I tend to do that first, and then what I do is I take a toothbrush, because it'll give you a finer spray of color. And what you do is you just flick it with your thumb, and it gives you a finer spray of color. And then you can take your baby white and you can clean up some areas that you don't want. Maybe you don't want a whole lot of in one area. I kind of like it, so I'm going to leave it as is. So there's our cute little spring, or the in-between. I guess we'll call it the in-between. So it's not quite spring, but it's not winter either. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you'll give it a try. And don't forget to get your downloadable. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.